Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. This is week 11 with high humidity. We've got Nanette Raddick and myself, Brendan Bunyan, and special guest today, we've got Bob Katter. Bob, how you going, mate?
G'day, Bob. How are you?
G'day, Brendan. G'day, Nanette.
All right. Well, yeah, no, we have got a special guest today. I call Bob the grandfather of North Queensland politics. And I'm really pleased, Bob, you can give up your time this morning to chat with us on our show. This is week 11 of our show, and it is growing in popularity, and we're quite pleased. It's a different format, Bob. It's a show that allows people to sort of show more of themselves. And, you know, I like to liken it to being like at the pub and having a chat about a few topics to do with the North, etc. So I thought I might ask you to start the interview off, ask you about how the KAP, and a lot of people don't realise this, but the KAP is only 8 years old. But, you know, what motivated you? What's that story that sort of started you in this direction and to form your new party 8 years ago?
Story starts with the Country Party, and every single agricultural industry had arbitration. All our workers had arbitration, a very strong arbitration system. So our workers, our wages paid in Queensland were the highest. We had the highest paid employees in the world, and that was our proudest boast. Now, they state the high wages is a problem. Then it was the pride of the nation. Now it's the problem. And it's not the problem. So that story starts way back with the Country Party and the achievement of arbitration. Fair go for all the farmers and all the employees. So what happens in the latter years of the Bajocki-Peterson era, and I'm not going to talk federally here because I think the real story is in Queensland. A little group of people, a lot of them been to universities and thought they were a bit cleverer than the rest of we country yokels, stabbed Joe in the back, got rid of him. They took the party from 42% down to 14%. I'll repeat that slowly. These geniuses took the party from 42% down to 14%. 62% we're on two-party preferred. And that's what they did to us. The fifth column in our party. Now, that was the first thing to happen. The second thing was the taking of the guns off us. You now have a country that has 36,000 firearms to defend itself with. I mean, they're semi-automatic firearms. If you like, they're not a bolt action, a primitive bolt action. You got 36,000. When we were at war with Indonesia, I had joined up in anticipation of war. We were on 24-hour call over there. We had 500,000 semi-automatic rifles in the army, not 36,000, 500,000. And we had over 1 million weapons in private hands. Now, oh, geez, we'll get like America. There are 8 deaths in Queensland. With draconian laws in New South Wales, there was 38 deaths with guns. With absolutely the most highly restrictive laws in Victoria, there was 54 deaths with guns. We had no laws controlling guns in Queensland at all. Switzerland, every single house they said, oh, you get like America. Oh, no, we might get like Switzerland, with the lowest death rate with guns in Europe, maybe in the world. The 2 states in America that have virtually no deaths with guns at all have the highest gun ownership in the world. That is Texas. North Dakota and South Dakota, right? But they took our guns off us. They disarmed this nation, and they took your right to protect your home off you. Now the only one person who has the right to protect your home is the police, and I wish you well. If you think you can ring them up and have them arrive on your doorstep in time to save you, well, you better think again, Buster Brown. The average downtime in our family is 2 hours, and that doesn't include the occasion of 2 weeks. So, one, they weren't content to stab Joe in the back, and that was all right. That's politics. I went along with it. I was loyal to Mike Ahern, one of the leaders of the group. He won the battle, and that's politics. So you've got to be loyal to the leaders. So I was loyal to the leaders. But when they proceeded to try and put Joe in jail, they'd gone too far then. So that was problem one. Problem two was the disarming of the nation and the taking of the right away from me to protect myself and my home. I'm not going to cede that right to the Crown. No one, intelligent people who have sat down throughout human history, whether you go right back to Magna Carta with Archbishop Langton and William Marshall, or if you go to the Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights by the Americans, Thomas Jefferson, the greatest minds in human history, the people that wrote up the Bill of Rights in Great Britain, all of those people incorporated the right to bear arms. Because if you don't have that right in there, then the only person that will have firearms will be the people in uniforms. And we know what sort of society that is. Leave that aside, right?
Yeah.
They did not deregulate the wool industry. The ALP deregulated the wool industry. But the National Party, my party, the Old Country Party, that had put in place all the arbitration, they deregulated the sugar industry. They deregulated the maize industry. They deregulated the egg industry. They deregulated the tobacco industry. They deregulated the dairy industry. And all of those industries were murdered, subsequently murdered. We're closing a sugar mill every 2 or 3 years in Australia now, since deregulation. It's just slowly grinding out of existence. The tobacco industry, 5,000 people, 3,000 employed in Victoria, 2,000 in Mareeba in North Queensland, gone completely. People still smoke. They're still smoking much the same levels they were before, but now they smoke foreign tobacco. The egg industry, we had 23 egg producers in North Queensland. Now we've got 1.5, I'd say, more accurately. In the dairy industry, we had 256 dairy farmers. I said 58 the other day, and I was corrected by the chairman of the Dairymen's Association in Atherton, and he said 48. So whether it's 48 or 58, there was 258. 1,500 people lost their jobs there. The privatisation of the railways took another 2,000 jobs out of North Queensland. That was an ALP special. I'm not blaming the National Party for the railways or for the timber industry. It was closed down by the ALP, nor for the wool industry that was closed down by the ALP, right? But the National Party, not the Liberals. Now, the Liberals closed the fishing industry. 1,500 jobs in the electorate I represent vanished. Now, that is a catalogue of absolutely disastrous destruction. And as I said on air this week, it is humiliating for me as an Australian to watch 2 foreign corporations, one Japanese and one Chinese, battling for control of a third of the dairy industry. When foreigners have already got the rest of the dairy industry, but this is the really big corporation. But it doesn't matter because China owns the biggest farming operation in Australia, Van Diemen's Dairies in Tasmania. They own the second biggest farming operation in Australia, Covey Station. They own what will be bigger than both those put together, the Ord Stage 2 and Stage 3, and that was given to them by the National Party.
Well, let's just talk about foreign investment and particularly Chinese investment. I mean, you know, there has been a lot of criticism of the Foreign Investment Board or Review Board. And, you know, I think more recently Lion Dairy was up for sale. 600 million, Japanese owned, but obviously a big market in Australia. And, you know, there was the fears that I believe China was going to buy that dairy as well more recently. And of course, you know, there's a lot of ownership of our water as well, Bob. I mean, you know, what needs to happen with the Foreign Investment Review Board? I mean, what do we need to do to change this from, you know, political governmental level?
Now, that's a very good question that you ask. And I deeply regret to have to tell you that electricity, just imagine your house without air conditioning, without television, without lighting, without all of your home appliances, but lighting and air conditioning so important in North Queensland. Imagine your house like that. Now, the control of our electricity industry, 40% of the industry is owned by China. Now, that's of the electricity generated in Australia, 40%. But 20% of all electricity generated in Australia now is via solar panels. Now, what has happened here is we've closed down the coal mines, closed down coal-fired power stations, and transferred the jobs in industry to China, where the solar panels are made. So you exported 20% of your electricity industry overseas, and 40% of what's left was bought up by the China. Now, the Foreign Investment Review Board, I asked a question in the House, would it be possible, Mr. Treasurer, for the CWA at Kainuna to get the contract for the foreign investment reviews? Because since it only entails you saying yes to everything, well, the CWA and Kainuna most will be there saying yes to everything and getting the money. It'd be far more usefully spent than spending it on a bunch of Durongos in Canberra that just sit there and say yes to everything. I know of only one single rejection in the last 23 years. And when I asked them, they said there was two. There was one that I quoted, which was Woodside Burma. And I think there was some friendly little contributions to the Liberal Party in that one. Can't prove it, but I reckon that there was some very great political generosity, I'll put it that way, involved in that decision. But all of a sudden, it was knockback. That was one knockback. Now, I mean, half the nation has been taken over in the last 20 years, and the 20 years before that, the other half had been taken over. So what do you have a Foreign Investment Review Board if it's just going to say yes to everything? But I must say to every person listening, they say yes to everything. You, most of you, for the ALP and the LNP. And the ALP and the LNP are firmly committed to foreign investment. That's what they call it, foreign investment. Well, I call it traitorously selling off your country. And if you say, well, we need the foreign investment for development. No, we don't. You know, Australians have the biggest savings in the world because the superannuation funds are taken out of our pay. So we have the biggest savings sector in the world. And what does it spend on? The roulette wheel called the stock market. So in my day, 60% of all superannuation went in development projects via government securities.
Would you want to see a return of that, like any of that superannuation? Yeah. The
60-40 rule must be reinstituted so that 60% of it does not go on to a puffed up, overvalued stock market. And let me be very specific. Australians are spending $64 billion a year. Remember that figure, 64. My age, no, I'm cheating a bit there. 64 billion 25 years ago. It is now 1,647 billion a year that's pouring into the into the stock market from your superannuation. And there's no value behind it. So we're sitting on a ticking time bomb. None of us are going to have any money when we get old because that's going to be blown out the window. Superannuation is not worth two bob. It should have gone into government securities. And the railway lines into the mines were built by your government securities that you purchased through your superannuation. The roads, the bridges, the ports, huge amounts of money to set up things like the nickel plant in Townsville were put aside through these instrumentalities to develop industry and provide jobs. Now it is going on a roulette wheel called the stock market.
Bob, you mentioned before, like the donations that that some of the major parties in that get. Obviously, if anyone's seen the Townsville Bully today with the donation side into the KAP with the what's the headline read?
The Firearms Dealers Association has donated $100,000 to the KAP, and I also believe $30,000 has been donated by the Sporting Shooters Association, and it seems to have featured. It seems to have featured, obviously, as a number one article mentioned on the front page and an article further on. But, what I find quite intriguing is that, that we're talking like, 130,000 there, but the donations to the LNP are something like 1.8 million and the ALP 905,000, so, I mean, I don't understand why that doesn't make front page headlines as well, and perhaps a dissection of where those donations are coming from.
Well, you can see those donations on the website, and it's quite interesting. I don't know if anyone's actually spent the time to have a look at it, but a lot of the times, your big corporations, they play both sides of the fence. So, Bob, and you'll know this probably better than anyone, but your Woolworths and Coles, they don't just pay the ALP, they don't just pay the LNP, they pay both sides to make sure that they get a favourable outcome and make sure that laws don't get changed to make life hard, I guess. So, Bob, do you want to speak about?
Let me be very specific. Let me again be very specific. I've been around a long time, and I love doing research. So you have those combinations. You should have a very thorough knowledge. Woolworths and Coles, the last time I looked, are unionised. That means when you get a job there, the union fees are taken out of your pay. Woolworths and Coles don't donate the money. You, the employee of Woolworths and Coles, donate the money to the union. Now, I don't know how much of that union money is rerouted into the pockets of the ALP. Figures like 8 or 9 million have been bandied around, but there would be about 23 million that is going to the union. Now, maybe things have changed since I did the research, and I'll apologise if they are. But when I did the research, the situation was about 23 million, and it appeared, and I was told by, again, sources that may be reliable or unreliable, that 8 million of that was going back into the Labor Party. But I'd be surprised if it wasn't. I would be surprised if it wasn't. Now, it's Woolworths and Coles. For Woolworths and Coles, you can read a whole stack of other industries that are doing exactly the same. Now, if the Woolworths and Coles are giving that amount indirectly to the Labor Party, you can rest assured that they would be giving more than that to the Liberal and National parties. You could count on. Look at the statements made by the National Party leadership, complimenting, flattering, I might even say grovelling to Woolworths and Coles. And I can get you the quotes if you want.
I just find it intriguing. Oh yeah, go on, Brendan.
Through the COVID stuff, you mean they were sort of telling everyone how good they did through the COVID stuff, Bob?
Well, look, I'm sorry, I didn't really answer your question. They haven't shot us about, getting donations from the gun people. Well, when we floated our party, we called it the Freedom and Fun Party. I was singing and dancing on the stage, and we had all of our candidates dancing and charging Parliament House, their suits with baseball bats. We're the fun party. We're the Freedom and Fun Party. We don't go around restricting your freedoms. We want people to go fishing, camping, hunting, shooting. And heaven only knows if this was taking place you would not have the highest male suicide rates in the world, and particularly amongst the young people who particularly go fishing, camping, hunting. And now they've taken away going to the pubs off. The cost and the dangers from breathalyzer testing are such that people can't go to the pubs anymore. You've just taken all our freedoms and funds away from us. And you've always got these reasons that you're protecting us. We're doing it for our own good. Yeah, well, that has been the refuge of every totalitarian government in human history. We're doing it to look after you. So now, as far as money goes, I think I had $70,000, $72,000 to spend in the year where $2.5 million was spent to get rid of me. They could have written me off as a hopeless cause now, but that was their last real efforts to get rid of me. They have money we can't dream, and both of you would be well aware of that. They have money we can't dream of. So in the state elections in the last month, you will be buried in their advertising, and you will be conditioned that there are two people out there. You've got to make a decision between left and right, ALP, LNP. There's no North Queensland in there. There's no possibility that owner-operators who don't fall into the left or right category, or the aspirational classes, the miners who work like fury to try and buy 5 or 6 houses so in their old age they don't have to work, and become, if not rich, at least moderately well off, the aspirational classes, they don't exist. You're all left and right. It belongs to the middle of the last century. I don't know what they teach in universities, but I'd strongly suggest that you don't take too much note of your curriculum. Left and right is long, long gone. It's the aspirational classes and the owner-operator classes are going to have to fight back, and it's a long way back for those people that want to run their own lives instead of being run by giant corporations, having the CCTV cameras looking at you morning, noon and night.
All right, well, let's just talk about North Queensland a bit more. I know that there was some recent media this week from the KAP. Robbie, the leader of the KAP, spoke about the failure of the NAIF of NAIF and, a KAP proposal for the development bank. Bob, would you be able to tell our listeners more about the development bank and the potential of the development bank and what it really could do to really, set alight North Queensland a bit more?
Well, I was given the directions from Cabinet to take responsibility for the state bank. And Bill Gunn, the Treasurer, who I was responsible to, but we worked very closely together. We believe there should be a specially set up development arm of that bank. And we believe that it should lose $40 million a year. And after 3 or 4 years, it should be making $100 million a year in profit. Because if it's a development bank, it's for a host of reasons where the banks won't go. Banks and investment companies in Australia, they know tourism and they know housing because they have a holiday every year or frequently during the year, I suppose in most cases. And they understand that. They don't understand the cement works, which I want to see built in North Queensland. We only have one cement works, that's South East Cook. If you can start building dams and railway lines into the Galilee, then you need a lot of cement. And you open up Galilee, 2 or 3 or 4 million people living in North Queensland, and that's a lot of cement. But they don't understand building a cement. They don't understand building a dam. They don't understand any of those things. So how would you ever get any money off a bank when you were trying to talk to a man born blind about the sun? It's impossible. And that's why since 1911, I think it was, I could stand corrected there, that King O'Malley, created the Commonwealth Bank. And it was, amongst other things, a development bank.
Mhm.
Now, let me just be very specific. In the good old days, 60% of your superannuation went into government securities. The Queensland government borrowed from those securities to build the railway lines, to create the coal industry. We were a coal importing nation in 1960.
Mhm.
And over the next 17 years, we became the biggest coal exporting nation on earth. And that was your money at work. And I really got to, reach for the vomit basket when I see Cbus out there saying, oh, your money working for you, creating jobs. And you see them building houses and football stadiums and tunnels in Brisbane and ring roads around Melbourne. And every single one of those things will absorb your money till the day you die. If it had gone into cement works or into great heroes, I'm very proud of my son-in-law, Rob Nye, because at long last, we will start actually manufacturing army equipment to defend our country if a terrible, horrible thing occurs. We will be able to defend our country because we will make those products here, not overseas. You get in a war, as we did in the Second World War, we had 16 Beaufort fighters. Now, to put that in context, America was knocking out 50,000 fighters a month at one stage. 50,000 a month. Japan had 72,000 warplanes, 72,000. And we had 16 Beaufort fighters to defend our country. And
not much.
We went around and tried to put a machine gun on the trainer plane wings. I mean, and there's a great quote in my History of Australia, which I'm very, very proud of, a history book called Incredible Race of People. But there's a great quote in there, and they asked the head of the Australian Air Force how the Wirraways were going to go against the Zeros. Zeros had shot every Spitfires, wiped out the skies. The American planes wiped out the skies. It was the greatest plane the world had ever seen. And how our Wirraways, trainer planes with a machine gun tied on the wing, was going to go. And he said, "De salutamus moratori est," which is the gladiator salute. We who are about to die salute you. Which is not funny, really. It was very, very tragic.
They didn't back themselves anyway.
We're away of the shooting down, and they were all shot out of the skies. It was very, very sad. And they were great heroes. My father always said, I talk about, kamikazes being brave. What about our boys went up the Wirraways? And Sir Douglas Logan, one of my great mentors, who was a fighter pilot in the Battle of Britain, he said, our boys that went up, they were just coffins with wings, Wirraways. So we don't want that to happen again.
Bob, you mentioned about football stadiums and tunnels and all that sort of stuff. Well, is it get you, looking at the political landscape, what's going on? We've had the National Party. They've been in power. They've essentially held the balance of power in the federal seat for 26 of the last 36 years, and yet we haven't seen a dam probably built in North Queensland since what I know there was built one in
I think 20 years ago.
There'll be one built in Palm Island in 2000, but I think before that there was one built in Proserpine in 1989. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, there was some built. There's been a lot of dams built for community water supply, for town water supply. They're town water supply dams, right?
Nation building dams like
nothing. And they will say Paradise Dam. No. Well, Paradise Dam, no farmer ever took a drop of water out of Paradise Dam. It was built to help a foreign corporation that owned the sugar mill at Bundaberg. And it was so shabbily and ridiculously built that it's been closed down. So it was only ever the golden handshake for a company, Bundaberg Sugar, and the annual National Party Christmas party was the Bundaberg Rum National Party Christmas party. That was how close we were to Bundaberg Sugar. And of course, the only dam was built to look after Bundaberg Sugar, not the farmers.
Unbelievable.
No farmer ever took a drop of water out of the dam. So it was just another example of looking after your rich friends.
Mm. I'll just interject, but we'll talk about dams a bit more. But Bob, people, as they are watching this live interview, are posting some questions or comments, and I've got one about the development bank. Rowell Walton asks if you could please paint a picture of what can be achieved with a development bank, not just for North Queensland, but across all of Australia.
Rowell Walton is one of Australia's great heroes. He doesn't know this, but 1 in 7 farmers in Australia have received the Farm Family Assistance grants. If your income does not make welfare payments, the government tops your income up to welfare payments.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Rowell Walton organised that meeting, chaired that meeting that achieved that. Now, I've got to say, the tiger in the tank originally for that was the Mareeba Rural Action Council. But of course, they're very close to Rowell Walton and our little political party. And Rowell took their program to that conference called by Wayne Swan. Kevin Rudd was the Prime Minister then, and they agreed to it. Now, it takes no joy in pointing out the National Liberals never went near it. Right? But 1 in 7 farmers, their incomes have not made welfare payments. That is so sad. But Rowell is the great hero that delivered that to his country. Now, in answer to his question, I wouldn't have to tell Rowell Walton this, but a lot of the people listening in and tuned in, I will, that we intend to make a fortress up here in North Queensland. Anyone that thinks we're staying in North Queensland believes in the tooth fairy. Please God, we'll be able to separate off for a territory and maybe even a state government, but let's not jump ahead of ourselves too fast. But from that fortress, we will sally forth. Once we've got the bridgehead on the other side of the river, there'll be no stopping us. I can assure you of that. And I might point out that the Labor Party was entirely founded, created, and moved out of North Queensland. And they did these wonderful things for us. One of them, as Rowell will tell you, was the Development Bank. So that there was a fund of money to build the dairy factories, to build the sugar cane plants. Sorry, I'll try that again. The sugar mills, the mineral processing plants, they were all built by the Development Bank. Well, you've only got a minerals industry because we had a development bank in existence with the Queensland government, that wonderful Theodore Labor governments, which ceased in the 1950s. They were destroyed by what we now call the leftist elements, and that's a term from the last century, but it applied very much in those days. The extreme left, through their capturing a number of key unions, captured control of the Labor Party, they booted everybody else out. And you had then an extreme radical group of people that bore no resemblance to the aspirational classes that had created the Labor movement. But the Development Bank was the key to creating the dairying industry, the key to creating the sugar industry. It was the key to creating the cattle industry because they built all the meatworks. They were all government-owned meatworks. And we broke Lord Vestey, who was paying the cattlemen nothing. And then we could process our own cattle in these government-owned meatworks. And then the cattle industry bloomed and blossomed. So all of those industries were created out of a development bank. Without that development bank, you'd have nothing. I mean, let me just give you one quick example before I shut up on this issue. The development bank monies that were going into the state bank from your superannuation, went into building the Emerald Dam. The Emerald and Burdekin Falls Dam at Ayr and the Emerald Dam at Emerald, Fairburn Dam as it's called, they were built in the late 90s, and they were the last dams to be built in Queensland, with the exception of that absolutely disgraceful thing called the Paradise Dam. So those two. Now let me just go back to Emerald. Right, Emerald Dam cost 145 million to build. Within 6 or 7 years, it was producing over $120 million a year in agricultural earnings, almost all export earnings. So the government was getting 30 million a year out of an investment of 140 million. Now, it doesn't stop there. Since the dam was there and the water was there, they were able to open up 3 of the biggest coal mines in Australia there. They couldn't open up because they had no water for washdown. When they got the water for washdown, they could open up those mines, and they were producing 760 million within 17 or 18 years. So within 17 years, this little dam that cost 140 million was now producing for the Australian economy $1,000 million a year, which the government was taking 300 million a year in profit. So I like calling it, and in the development bank, I like calling it a tax revenue creation investment. That's what I call it.
So how come the two major parties are totally against it now? Like we've obviously seen. Do they have no vision now, or is it they're just hell bent on making footpaths and footy stadiums now?
Adolf Hitler got elected in Germany, and then he got elected again and again and again. And there was no guns at the polling booths. People thought that fascism, Nazism was marvellous. They thought it was marvellous. People voted in the communists. That's probably not entirely true. But, you could argue that people voted for the communists. I mean, the communists murdered 78 million people. Stalin and Mao Zedong presided over the murdering of 78 million. It makes Hitler almost look like a good guy. He only murdered 26 million people. He only murdered 26 million people. These are the greatest evils the world have ever seen. And yet the world was obsessed by this. I mean, Great Britain, little children of 6 and 7 years of age were working in factories, 15 hours a day. This was the period of great growth and wealth for Britain, when it took over and conquered the world over the dead bodies of little children and the slave trade. So you say, well, why did they do it? And they had democracy in Great Britain. Why did they do that? Why did they vote for governments that did that? I don't know why people opt for evil, but they do. And the free market system is a system driven by greed, where the big sharks eat the little fishes. And I want, pleased to say this from the depths of my heart to my fellow Australians, we don't have any big sharks in Australia. The only big shark we ever had was BHP, and it's a foreign corporation now. Thank you, Mr. FIRB. The only big shark we ever had was the steel industry is gone, the motor car industry is gone, the aluminium industry, I can't see how it can survive much longer. And there's a bit of a steel industry, but it won't last much longer. The cheap imports from China are murdering the steel industry. So all secondary industry will be gone. All the nation is left with is 2 quarries. And as a mining man all of my life, I'm not a cattleman. I've had cattle all my life, but I'm not a cattleman. I'm a mining man. I had worked my own mines and developed my own mines. Mines run out of oil. The Floridora mine, $3.2 million worth of copper, and then it was all mined out. And no more Floridora mine. It's all gone. And that's what is happening to Australia as we talk.
Well, Bob, is there any hope? I mean, I hope to get I'm attempting to get the director of Project Iron Boomerang on the show, which is, a wonderful nation building project that has been spoken about for many years. And there's certainly lots of people on board with the concept. And it's all about, manufacturing slabs so we can export rather than just exporting the ore, which we do. So we can create, a lot more in terms of jobs and opportunity here. What are your thoughts on projects like that? Is there ever any hope that we could get a big project like that off the ground?
You've been with me, Nana. We've been electioneering, and you've heard me. I ask when I say hello to people, I say, if you're the boss of Australia, what's the first two things you'd do? I would say 95% of people will say it's one or two: stop the country from being often sold out, and or stop jobs from going overseas. That's what they care about. If people care that way, we're up, and you two would know, be well aware. You're up against, we will spend maybe 300,000, and God bless some of the shooters who are going to wear it on their shoulders. I might add, the 60% of the surface area of New South Wales is now held by the Shooters and Farmers Party. And they're not a Shooters Party or a Farmers Party. They're a freedom party. They don't want the big two. They know they've sold our country out. They know they're selling our country out on a daily basis. As we speak, you're watching a titanic struggle for control of the dairy industry of Australia between the Japanese and the new colonists, the new imperial economic colonists, Chinese. They're going to take it. And, the Chinese that came to Australia, this particularly North Queensland, I'd say 1 in 4. North Queensland has got a Chinese person somewhere in the family tree. I know amongst my best friends, I'd probably name 3 or 4 of the 10 would have. And but they came here. They didn't sit in a tenement in Sydney on social welfare payments, or organising the local Labor or Liberal Party branches. They were out making a quid for themselves and making a quid for their country. Those were the people that came out from China in those days. Completely different than the mob that are here today. They're not out to make a quid. They're out to take a quid off the rest of us, sit in their bloody little tenements. And I might add, those tenements, which are not just Chinese people, but a lot of people, but those tenements have spread COVID virus, which has taken a big toll on the Australian people. But let me return to your basic question. Can this nation achieve the bigger picture? Bradfield was a joke. The member for Townsville, which will be the city that benefits most from stage 1 of Bradfield, Hell's Gates, he said Katter's dragging around a dead dog. That was on the front page of the Townsville Bulletin. And I think that's probably a pretty fair call in those days. But it's not now.
No.
The Labor Party in Queensland has said they're favourably disposed. The Rudd government started the first spending on it in 30 years. It was resurrected. And the Jockey Peterson government, remember, and the Malcolm Fraser government announced the Bradfield scheme. Now, let me just draw you a portrait of Australia. If I had control, we would build Hell's Gate, as stage 1 of the Bradfield scheme. We would build the North Johnson Transfer, which is a mini Bradfield scheme at the back of Cairns. We would build dams all the way down the Mitchell River, which in fact, Gilbert and Mitchell Rivers will probably be bigger than the Bradfield scheme, as big as the Bradfield scheme. But what is now a dust bowl, Hughenden to Cloncurry to Mount Isa to the Territory border up to the Gulf. We have 3 months of rain, 8 months of super dry, terrible heat. everything dries out, dies. We've started keeping our cattle alive late in the year. It costs $1 billion in supplementary feeding. That's the current situation. And our cattle numbers, we have never gone forward with our cattle numbers in the last 40, 50 years. We're just flat out holding where we are. We should have double those numbers. Now I'll paint the picture, right? So Bradfield is built. Now cattle numbers in North Queensland double from 5 million to 10 million. The turn-off rate goes from 1 in 6 to 1 in 3. So now you've got 10,000 billion a year flowing into the North Queensland economy. Yeah. That is huge. The economists say 10 people for every $1 million. So that's 10 billion, that's 10,000, multiplied by 10 is 10 million people. I think it's 10 million. Oh, I wish I had a notebook. I think it's 10 million people in North Queensland, just on the cattle industry alone. You build a multi-user, people owned by the Australian people. And if the Australian people are not going to do it, will to do it, then we North Queensland people will do it. We get the balance of power, it'll get built. A multi-user rail line to Galilee. Half Australia's coal is in the Galilee. So this great industry is carrying this nation on its back. Coal industry will now double in size. And it'll double in size in North Queensland. So now you've got, I don't know, another 3-4 million people, whatever it is. I think it's 1 million with cattle. And I think it's 2-3-4 million with coal. But now these people are living inside the Great Dividing Range. There's no people living in Australia except for a little narrow coastal belt.
That's right.
Running around to Adelaide and back up to Cairns. It's about 100 kilometres wide and a little dot around Perth. Take that out, you've got 94% of Australia. There's less than 1 million people living.
Yep.
Guess where all the coal and iron ore is? There.
That's right.
Guess where all the water is? There. In the other Australia. Yeah, that's not going to continue. That's not going to continue. And start with the Northern Territory. The port is now owned by China. The only development project, the Ord Stage 2 and Stage 3, is owned by China. You can see where this is going.
Yeah.
But let me just be positive, right? And say, the golden boomerang is an idea that's behind Bradfield, but its time has come because we need a steel industry. We want a steel industry back. We want a motor vehicle industry back. And if the Southern's not going to do it, well, we'll have 5 or 10 million people living up here in Queensland. And every car bought under a government contract will be made in Australia. And if you don't want to have motorworks down there, well, we'll have one up here. We've got steel industry up here.
And people
motor
struggle
vehicle
with that.
Steel industry.
People struggle at the concept of build it and they will come. It's a thing. Like people. It's like I always use that example for the Burdekin. I don't think many people would live there if we didn't have the dam. It's quite simple. Someone made a decision back in the day to build a dam there, and there's been a lot of prosperity there since. Same deal. If we do the Iron Boomerang, if we do the Hell's Gate, do the teletransfer, you do all that sort of stuff.
Same with Copper String 2.0.
Be screaming out for people to actually come up. Copper String.
Yeah.
There are huge rivers that run into the Gulf of Carpentaria on the Northern Territory side. And but look, when you say it can't happen, these are visionary projects. I mean, it doubles the wealth of Australia. But if those developments are done by foreign corporations, you'll get virtually nothing out of it. More and more, our sugar mills, one sugar mill I'm familiar with, the entire administrative and research offices, you have to do continuous chemical analysis in their sugar mill. All of those jobs now are Chinese nationals. They're not Australians. The foreman next year, I'm told, will all be Chinese. And it's only a matter of time before the entire workforce is Chinese. Now, that's what you're watching. And if you keep voting for those parties, you are condemning your nation to that. Your children will be working for some sort of modern day peasant in poverty for foreign landlords. That's the future for it. Now, wake up to yourself. Wake up to yourself. Now, I just want to give you a ray of hope. If you read my book, you'll read about a bloke called Edward Theodore, easily the most important person in Australian history. Easily. No one knows his name. That'll give you some idea about our education system. No one knows his name. And if you think that's my idea, well, hold on a minute, because when Paul Keating, unfortunately, one of the most important, not good, bad, but he was important, I have to say that, in recent Australian history. The architect of the free market system, which has destroyed us. But Keating was asked who his heroes were. Without hesitation, he said J.T. Lang and Edward Theodore, Red Ted. When Malcolm Fraser was asked who his heroes were, he said the American Franklin Roosevelt and the Australian Edward Granville Theodore. When Jamie Packer burst into my office uninvited, and he saw on the wall a picture of Ted Theodore, he said, Red Ted is Granddad's closest friend. I said, I knew they were in business together. No, they were bosom buddies. So there you are, three of the most important, powerful people in recent Australian history. And little me, I'm nobody, but you couldn't get four more unlike people than Jamie Packer, me, Malcolm Fraser and Paul Keating. We all agree on one thing. Now, this bloke was a miner, a Chillago. He was up there to make his fortune. He couldn't find a good ore body to work. So like the rest of Australia, he ended up working for nothing down the mines at Chillago, the gold mines there. And he went down for the third time in his life, and there were people killed. They refused to go down. They organised a strike, and they all threatened with sacking. So they all went down, and then two of them died. And he was nearly killed in the accident. So he formed a union. And everyone joined the union. You took a ticket or you took a hiding, as Ross Fitzgerald historian said. It was pretty country to take a ticket or take a hiding. There are very funny stories associated with this. We haven't got time for today. But so I said, where are we going with this, Ted? You know, this union business. Oh, well, see, we're going to take over Queensland, and then we can take over Australia. And then we'll get arbitration, we'll get decent wages, you know. We'll build batteries so the little blokes like myself in my mines, I'll be able to process, you know. I don't have to be a big corporation. I'll be able to dodge around them. Yeah, and we'll build meatworks, you know, and we'll build dairy factories, we'll build sugar mills, and all the cane cutters will become farmers. And hey, Ted, you're on a bicycle at Chillago. You know, you take over Australia, aren't you? Yep. He said, yep. Within 12 years, he had captured Queensland with a ruthless power. The AWU owned all of the endorsements for the ALP members, so he completely controlled the ALP. The ALP, one government, and when they do these wonderful things, in every single electorate, in every single election, outside of South East for 43 years, we all voted for the ALP. There's nothing like that in human history. But if you deliver to the people will love you. Don't think the people are dumb. I get great faith in the Australian people. Don't think they're dumb. You go out there and you build a Bradfield scheme. You build that rail line, multi-user rail line to Galilee. They will love you forever. You build the iron boomerang and, you know, have steelworks again in Australia and a car industry and a petrol industry, which could be created tomorrow if they introduced 10% ethanol and build a giant refinery. You'd have 80% of Australia's petrol being produced in Australia. I don't know if we've got an army. What's an army? What use is an army? To get 3 weeks of petrol.
Oh, no.
How are you going to fight a war with 3 weeks of petrol? Don't talk to the Japanese. They had 1 year of petrol
in 3 weeks.
and they went to war. They went to war because they knew even a year's petrol they could never have an economy or a future or an army. So they had to fight a war to get down to Indonesia to the pit. So if Theodore could do that on a bicycle, he didn't have enough punished by a horse, and I motor cars then. If he could do that on a bicycle without a telephone in Chilligo, then surely some of us could have the courage and the patriotism to stand up.
Do you think the patriotism in Australia is coming back? Like, do you think it's coming back into fashion?
I think it's always been there. I wrote a piece on Anzac Day, and I just went out into our street and sang that beautiful song, 21 Guns. Very sad song, very sad to me because my great-grandfather's brother died at Gallipoli, and grandmother's brother died soon after release from Shanghai prison. So it meant a lot to me, that song. And I had my old 303 rifle and did present arms and all that sort of thing. And my wife was there holding the Australian flag. And all our neighbours started coming out in the street. And my son-in-law, he plays the trumpet, and he played the last post 4 times, and almost the entire street in a suburban street in Brisbane, they turned out. And our numbers on Anzac Day are higher now than they ever were.
That's right.
So I think we're a very patriotic people. We don't flash it around as much as the Americans, and we have not had leaders that have brought out that patriotism. You know, Johnny Howard was a good Australian, but, you know, he didn't have that aggressive nationalism that the boys at Eureka had, or the boys that founded the Labor movement in Queensland. Don't get me wrong. From the 50s onwards, the Labor movement became the exact opposite of what was the Theodore Labor movement. They became the champions of the free markets. They were the abolitionists that led the destruction of all of the protection in Australia. Paul Keating said, we will be the freest economy on earth. And it was he that brought down all that protection. I mean, we have an army to protect Australia. Countries have huge processes of tariffs and subsidies and trade arrangements that protect their economy. We have no protections at all. We gave away all of our protective mechanisms. And
Bob, do you think people are recognising that now? You know, people out in communities.
Yes,
do you think they're recognising we're exposed now, particularly with, you know, with the implications of COVID-19 and our strained, sometimes not so good relationship with China? You know, the implications of us asking, you know, for an inquiry into coronavirus and then getting slammed with, you know, tariffs, and some of our abattoirs, their meat was no longer wanted. Do you think people are realising now?
As I said to you, you know, I cover in a week, I'd say close to 1,000 people I cover in a week. And probably half of them, I would ask that question. If you're the boss of Australia, what's the first 2 things you would do? I would say 95% of people include what you've just said. So the people are there willing it, but they're completely, what's the word I'm after? Influenced, bamboozled, mesmerised, is probably the best word, by the media and the signs and the conditioned thinking that there are only 2 choices out there. Oh, I've got to vote against the terrible Labor Party. Oh, the Liberal Party have been disastrous. I've got to get rid of them. Oh, well, you keep thinking like that and you condemn your nation to annihilation. And I might add 3 other things here, and they're dreadful statistics to quote to you. But within 100 years, those people that you called Australians 20 years ago, there will only be 7 million of them left, because we're well below zero population growth. Secondly, we are bringing 650,000 people a year into this country. They're
That's
coming
one thing.
from
That's
countries-
one thing COVID's done is slowed that down.
Slowed that right down.
Well, please God, you're right. Please God, you're right. But remember, the universities are a very powerful force, and they are bringing most people in. And a very good friend of mine, one of the highest up people in the universities in Australia, he said, this is 15 years ago, he said to me, if you stop the universities from being visa shops, because that's what they are these days, if you stop them from being visa shops, you'll close half the universities in Australia. I said, is that your opinion? He said, no, it's in 3 reports to the Council of Universities, in 3 separate reports. That is not spelled out loudly, so they're not going to do that, but it's there. So you're being buried alive. These people come from countries with no democracy and or no rule of law and or no industrial awards. They work for nothing. And or no Judeo-Christian belief system. And we might not go to church on Sundays, but we are brought up in a culture we're supposed to love your neighbour, do the right thing by other people, make the world a better place. That's the Christian values. And they're inculcated into you, whether you know it or whether you don't. And there's no egalitarian tradition and or no egalitarian tradition. We have Brahmins and we have untouchables in some countries. And the great tragedy is the third biggest group being bought in Australia, China's biggest, India's number 2. The third biggest is the Middle East, and they are not bringing in the persecuted minorities, the Sikhs, Jews, and Christians. They're bringing in the persecutors. And if you want to know the reason why, that wonderful 60 minutes, those people, I'd give them every award I've ever known to expose what's going on. We'll bring you into Australia so long as you take out membership of the party and give your voting rights to me to exercise. Is it any wonder that stupid Premier of Victoria, who built the Belton Road into Victoria, Chinese Belton Road, the Belton Road replaces the old Silk Road, which controlled all of world trade, all of world trade, right? And the Belton Road is designed to control all of world trade. And the Belton Road is owned by China, right? Now, this bloke is gliding about building the Belton Road into Victoria. Well, I'll tell you what the Belton Road brought into Victoria. COVID-19. That's what it took into Victoria. And if ever I have seen, it took in great pleasure. They have a law where they can murder little babies up till the time they're born. Just right up, and arguably after they're born. Now, this is monstrous to me, right? This bloke knew this Turkish business was going on, claims he didn't. There's no one in Australia who believes him, right? Claims he didn't know it was going on. Outrageous stuff. And their police force, they are hound dogs. Anyone that disagrees with their belief system, like people that go to church on Sundays, they've got to be thrown in jail.
Well, just look at what's happening in Hong Kong at the moment. I mean, that's something that we are aware of via the media. So, yeah.
Well, if you think that's not going to reach in here, then you believe in the tooth fairy. And, for those people who are scared by this, it was a lot more scary when I was a kid listening to John F. Kennedy. I was 17 and I was in the Mount Carmel classroom, and we'd ignored the Christian Brotherhood at all transistor scenarios, listening to Kennedy's speech. And there was not one of us that wasn't ashen-faced and terrified, because there was no way Kennedy was going to back down. And we were very well educated, actually, looking back. We all knew there was no way Christian was going to back down. It was the era of Stalingrad. So it was on. I mean, his nuclear war was on. And if you think it's terrifying now for China, it was infinitely more terrifying then. I'm only a kid. I'm 18 years of age. I'm showing a rifle. I'm being sent to Indonesia, fight an army 30 times the size of our army. It was scary times. So we've had it before, and we've battled through. And just keep in your eyes Red Ted Theodore on a bicycle. yeah, we're going to take over Australia. You know, and look, if there's a concluding note to this interview, I tell this story over and over again, and I never get sick of it. And I find it very hard to tell this story. I'm in my first generation, second generation, third generation family out here. We gave our son, died at Gallipoli, the hanging prison. But I was the unit historian. We were rated F1 ready for combat. We were on 24-hour notice to go to Indonesia to fight. Italians, 1,000 men. It's a basic fighting unit. And I was the unit historian. I was a sergeant. And I went to a major and I said, look, in the Second World War, it's all negative. Fallback battalion, we failed to hold ground, we retreated, we wilted under fire. He said, what do you want to do, Katter? I said, I want to go down the RSL and find out, well, maybe that's a true story, I don't know. But let's just find out. He said, right on, do it. Come back and talk to me. Right on. So I went down the RSL at Waikol. We were camped at Waikol. The 49th Battalion was a Bush Rifles Regiment, mostly from North Queensland. I yelled out, anyone here know anything about 49th Battalion, Second World War? Remember, this is 1966 or something, and not all that long after the Second World War. Old Digger yelled out, yeah, mate, come down here. He said, the 49th, I wasn't in the 49th. He said, but they were the worst hit battalion of all. He said, when they were relieved at Sanananda at the end of the Kokoda track, when they were relieved, he said, there are only 28 of them able to walk out unassisted. 28. He said, do you know how many were in the battalion? I said, 851. 851 men. By the time we were relieved, there are only 28 of them that can walk out unassisted. It was all those left of us.
Yeah.
But not retreated. We had made our enemy who were trying to invade our country, we had made them pay for every metre they gained in buckets of blood. And a lot of that blood was ours. By the time they got to Port Moresby, there was nothing left. There was just not enough of them left to take Port Moresby. We lost every battle in Kokoda, every single battle as we retreated. And the best telling of the story is by a Japanese captain. He said, I attacked at full company strength in the morning with 120 men. He said, as the sun set, we attacked the Australian trenches all day long. And I call roll call, and there are only 12 voices answered me. And he said, these Australians have had no resupply for 2 weeks. They're starving. They must be out of ammunition. And won't these Australians ever give up? Won't they ever give up? He said, when we envelop them, as we will, they'll fight their way out and they'll be waiting for us 5 miles down the track, and we'll have to do this again and again. And he said, I smashed my face into the ground. Won't these Australians ever give up? No, we didn't. Who could see that 3 battalions, 3,000 men facing 15,000 men with 1 machine gun up against 600 machine guns and an army that hadn't been built, mate, beaten in 800 years of land warfare, that we could win? Well, we did, for Australians.
Yeah, that's right. We're Australians, no doubt about that. Now, Bob, look, I do have one more question, and I do thank you for the time you're giving us this morning. You know, I just want to divert.
It's very great.
No, I'm very grateful for it. I'm sure our listeners are too. North Queensland becoming the 7th state of Australia. Now, you know, lots of people talk about academics and people like yourself, other politicians. They talk about the benefits of competitive federalism. And of course, that's one of the major benefits or significant benefits that, you know, creating a new state in this country, and not, you know, not just North Queensland, you know, could bring about some really good stuff. And I always like to draw upon a story. It's, you know, during the Joh Bjelke-Petersen era, I think it was 1977, when Joh sort of remarkably said to the rest of Australia, we're getting rid of death taxes. So, you know, it cost the government at the time $30 million, but he said it's going. And as a consequence of that, there was this massive investment into Queensland and saw a significant growth and development, particularly in the Gold Coast area. But, you know, that was a bit of a creativity that brought about significant change and considerable opportunity for Queensland. I have no doubt that the creation of a new state and North Queensland being the 7th state, we would see similar things. But what are your thoughts on North Queensland becoming the 7th state of Australia?
Now, Nat, if we can get the balance of power, we dipped out by about 240 votes last time. You know, it's people that have been involved in the political game previously, yourself and Brendan, you know the value of organisation and money, and we have had neither. Now, this time, we've got good organisation, actually, and a little tiny bit of money. Pretty negligible, really. But we're very hopeful that we can win 3 or 4 seats. But if we can win 4 seats, and I won't beat around the bush, convince the One Nation person holding a seat in Moroni, then we will have 8 seats in the parliament. 8 seats would have controlled every single parliament for the last 50 years, bar 2 landslide elections. So when we get this control, if I get my way, and I'm bloody determined that I will, but you know, it's up to the state, it's not me. I must emphasise, it's their call, not mine. If I get my way, they will form a North Queensland Parliamentary Council. Whether you want to call that a government in waiting or whatever you want to call it, it's up to you. And if you want to govern Queensland, you'll provide $5,000 million to the North Queensland Parliamentary Council, and their projects will have no right of interference. Your environmental laws will vanish, all your other laws will vanish. If you think that we people that live in North Queensland are going to act to the detriment of our natural wonderland up here, you believe in the tooth fairy. We live in the natural wonderland. We don't live in the concrete jungle where all you greenies live. Greenies, grey is your colour, not green. You're not green, you're grey. You know, that will not happen. And the fact that we have control over that railway line, any of those coal miners start playing up and acting irresponsibly, we can cut them off because we've got control of the railway line. And I believe that some of those people will have a shot at dodging around the environmental conditions. But you will not have this business where, and I'll use Humidity as an example, they have said we have to do an assessment report. That's taken 15 months to do the assessment report. Now that we've done the assessment report, we can now do a bankable study as to whether the project is bankable. That will take 18 months to 2 years, right? So the government will be gone. All the undertakings are gone with it. So there's no promise of money anymore. That's vanished. New budgets, new government. Doesn't matter if it's still Scott Morrison as Prime Minister. He has a new cabinet. Well, everything's off after them. Anyway, so that takes us now, when you've completed that, now remember that's 3 years that have gone by, you then go into an environmental assessment, which will be another 18 months, right? And only when that is complete, you are then able to do a cultural assessment, in effect upon people living in the area and upon the traditional owners and all those sort of things, right? So they'll take you about 10 years. You know, nothing's ever going to get built. Nothing will ever get built. And that's why the critical factor here is that if you want to govern Queensland, then you're out on these development projects. It's back to the days where the politicians decide whether it's going to be built or not, and they will ride the tiger of whether they've done the right thing or wrong thing, as they should. The people in North Queensland won't be leaving them there if they do the wrong thing and destroy our natural wonderland and damage it in some way or other. Or, you know, I won't go into all the downside, besides that. But it's a very simple procedure. I mean, when anyone with brains has had the balance of power, they have got huge benefits for their people. What the Country Party got in its days was unbelievable. We were running the country. We were building dams every year. Building 300, 400, 600 kilometres of railway line every year. I mean, it was unbelievable. So North Queensland will go back to that great growth, fantastic growth. And that 5,000 million, undoubtedly, Robbie Katter and D'Amato and Kennedy and all of them, they've said again and again and again, rail line to the Galilee, owned by the people, North Queensland Development Authority, owned by people in North Queensland, can only be sold by way of referendum to people in North Queensland. None of this taking control and selling off the assets so you can give the people ice creams and fairy floss so you can buy your way through the next election with a football stadium or some other ridiculous stupidity. And don't get me wrong, the greatest supporter of the Cowboys, I was driving Kerry Bowstead around trying to get them off the ground, and one of my 4 or 5 closest mates put $1 million in to get that started. So don't get me wrong. But you answer the question, you know, can it be a reality? Once that Gully rail line is built, Hell's Gate's built, North Johnson transfer is built, and the weirs at
Mitchell,
it's northwest of Cairns. It'll come to me in a moment. Merry Farms. When those things are built, the population of North Queensland will soar to about 5 million people, and they will not be able to hold us there.
No.
Take not only Queensland, but also that part of the Northern Territory. We'll have the political muscle to do that. And have we North Queenslanders the will? Well, we were the people that created the Labor movement. It was created totally out of North Queensland. The Country Party, there were some exceptions, Jockey Peterson's, but it was controlled out of North Queensland. When the Labor government fell, after nearly 50 years, when it fell, the Premier of Queensland was from Mackay. When the new government came in, number 2 in the government was Ron Cairn from Mackay. So, you know, we have been, when the Jockey Peterson government fell, it was Russell Cooper at that stage, but I was number 2 ranking in the government. I was from Cloncurry, if you like, Charles Towers, you know, North Queensland. So it can happen if people like yourselves are out there committed and determined. And it can only happen if we are committed and determined. And we have a party where we have the power. You will never have the power inside the Liberal Party that is controlled from Brisbane. The LNP is controlled from Brisbane and always will be. The Labor Party is controlled from Brisbane and it always will be. You know, when you find these inextricable things that they're doing, absolutely ridiculous environmental things, well, the Liberal Party has got to win seats in Brisbane. It is based in Brisbane. It's thinking. It's all about Brisbane. It's not even South East Queensland. It's Brisbane. And there is no doubt that they're a very powerful movement in Brisbane. In my opinion, a very insidious movement, but they're very powerful. And so both parties will run down that, and they'll never build a dam. And they have. The Liberal Party's been there for 6 years, for the last 25. They never built any dams. The Liberal Party's been in power. Liberal National Party's been in power in Canberra for 26, I think, the last 33 years. They built any dams? No. Yeah. They built anything? No. They built nothing.
I think Barnaby Joyce spent about $100 million on feasibility studies to work out.
Lots of studies.
No, sorry. No, I've got to correct you. Right? This is a quote from Peter Cridlin on her program. We gave $5 5,000 million to a water fund to build dams. The 5,000 million is gone, and there hasn't been a weir or a dam built in Australia. That's Peter
Really?
Greenland, not me. And it's dead accurate. No, that was, I'm sorry, I correct myself there, 1,000 million. But 1,000 million had already been spent before that. It was 2,000.
Gee.
And she made a similar remark about the Nate. The Nate was there to build dams as well. So if you like, there's 7,000 million, or 5,000 hadn't been spent. I mean, there's a fund there for 6 years, and they built an extension to a Cowboy Stadium building, and an extension to a JCU building. 88 million expended out of 5,000 in 6 years. But look, I want people to know that we did it before, and we're the same people. We're the same people here that were there then, and we think the same. And I have every confidence that we will win through. And it inspires me. My own battalion, the 49th Battalion, was drawn mainly from North Queensland. Those things inspire me. If they can do it, we can do it. We are the sons and daughters of those people. And I have every confidence, but we are very close now. Very, very close indeed. I mean, we dipped out by 270 votes, I think 250 votes, whatever it was, in 2 electorates last time, or we had balanced power last time. And I don't think we were ready for it. But please God, we're ready for it now. So you form the North Queensland Parliamentary Council, and they're locked in. And we North Queenslanders control. And then they control North Queensland Development Authority. The 5,000 million is there. It's a revolving fund. Once that railway line's built, you'll have 20, 30, 40 million coming in every year, which will be farmed back out into more projects. And we will then be borrowing money, building projects, and paying them off, because these are make money projects. They're not absorb money projects.
Definitely critical. Look, Bob, I have one last question. Brenda might have one, but you know, you've been in this. You've been in this game for a very, very long time. You've met a lot of people. You've worked with a lot of different elected leaders. Look, I want to end on a bit of a positive note. Out of all the people you've met in current times that are still working in Parliament or, you know, in elected positions, who are our good guys? Who are the, you know, the fair income ones that you think have got the goods and are doing the best they can for the North, particularly?
You know, Nanette, we are being very positive. When we talk about the rail line into Galilee, owned by the people, multi-years ago, when we talk about Hell's Gate as stage 1 of the Bradfield scheme, or the North Johnson transfer, which kicks off where the real big water is in that area, west of Cairns. When we talk about deep water port at Yarrabah, to get our goods out, and the highway down, the bridle track highway. When we talk of all those things, that is positive. And we have a program. You give us the votes. You give us those 4 seats, and we will give you back this great growth. And if you think that's rubbish, well, there was someone sitting here in Townsville 26 years ago, I think it was, 35 years ago, when they started building the rail lines into the mines, when we had this tremendous development government that came in, the Bajocki-Peterson government. And Townsville then was 54,000 people. It's now 204,000 people. So when I say there'll be 4 million people instead of 1 million living in North Queensland, I don't talk it through, mate. I've been around a long time. I've seen it happen before. And it'll happen again if we've got the will to change our vote. That's all I'm asking. Change your vote. Change your vote. Now, to answer your question, I was asked by a group of some of the most high-flying businessmen in Australia, the 2 heads of banks, the major banks. I was just giving a small address to a very elite group of about 12, 15 people. And they asked me, is there anyone in there that could do the job of Prime Minister?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it's going to look bad because I can't think of anyone. So terribly inconsistent. And I'm thinking, and I said, well, Albo's probably the choice of them. Morrison was not on the radar at that time. Probably choice of them, but if you're asking me, can he do the job as good Prime Minister? Even though he's a good friend and I like him, no, I would say no. The only one I've seen who could do the job was Gridlin. She was running the government when Abbott was there, and that's to Abbott's credit. She was running it completely. They'd still be there today if Tony hadn't interfered in her running of the government. But she'd be one that I saw before, running, and she was more than capable of doing the job. She spent over 2 years out west working on cattle stations. She was very much a hands-on person. She was a ringer stockman in her younger days. Scott Morrison has got very deep Christianity, which stands him in good stead. And he's got very deep patriotism, which stands him in good stead. But, from a background of public relations and lawyer, I would wonder whether, and my own experience with him is beyond an irrigation. He wants to set a dam bill. He doesn't really. He's put us on the never plan. It'll be impossible to ever get the dam bill. And we'll burn up another 50 million of the 200 million. 50 million will be burnt up looking at it over a 10-year period. And it just gets lost in the ether. What did you achieve? No one will ever read any of those reports. I swear to you, there will not be 10 people that will read any of those reports. I won't. I'm the person most involved. I haven't opened the book, the cover on. So, Nanette, if you're asking me, I'm not entirely clear on the question, but if you're asking me who is the person I'd most follow in Australia, I'd probably say Jonesy, Alan Jones. I think Alan gets it right. And he is driven with a patriotism and a tenacious determination. I can understand why he's one of the great football coaches in Australia. He coached Balmain to 2 grand finals, and it was the Wallabies, another code before that. And Alan has a love of Australians. He just with him, and he just loves me. We went to the fights in Mount Isa, broke his head, and he was killing himself laughing. The major hit a little Dornish bloke, and he rolled into Alan's lap. Everyone's killing themselves laughing, but particularly Jonesy, Dornish bloke, and his lap covered in Vaseline. And but he was just loving himself, and there can't be anything more Australian than broke his head. But I've worked with probably the greatest person that I've ever met in my lifetime would probably be Pearl Logan, little humble housewife, daughter of a very poor dairy farmer at Malanda. But who gave Australia a quality of education? Pearl Logan. We had to sort it out to one person, that's Pearl Logan, because 25% of Australians lived in towns where there was no secondary school. There was no assistance to go away to school. So unless you're rich, you never got a secondary education. And she got the breakthrough. The first medical school built in 44 years in Australia. She was one of 3 key people that secured that medical school. Now there are 8, 9, 10, 11 medical schools that walk through the door. She opened the wool scheme. The wool industry carried us for 30 years, the wool scheme. And her husband probably more than her, but she was most certainly one of the people. And with my blackfellow cousin brothers, she was absolutely determined that wonderful legislation and wonderful things we did in those years, she was absolutely determined that we would do it. you know, I'm sort of saying that sort of person.
Yeah.
But I've got great faith in the team, and you both have been involved in that team, but that KP team, Robbie Katter, yeah, you know,
You must be pleased with how he has embraced and been handling the leadership role. I do see Robbie blossoming in that role, particularly here in Townsville.
No, the uppity little beggar, he's bloody carried away with himself. Yeah, bloody, you know, no, jealous as all hell of him. What are you talking about? But Shani Canute, you know, Shani's got very good political judgment and a steely determination. Those Canutes, I don't know, old great granddad Carl that came in a million years ago in the 1860s or 1870s, something. And I don't know, but they got something that other people just don't have. And the Meadow has been an explosion. I mean, it's just an explosion. I've never seen anything like him, from 0 to 100 miles an hour overnight. There's a lot of talented people come out of the Ingham Innisfail area, but he would be one of the more talented people that come out of that area. A lot of our leading surgeons have come out of there and Home Hill. But in that northern area, head of Transfield came out of that area. Deputy head of Coca-Cola for the world came out of that area. I could go on and on and on. And it's a good question that you ask, but I couldn't ask for a better leadership team in there at the present moment. The fire of De Meadow, the determination and achievement-oriented Canute, and Robbie Katter. I said when he went into politics, I said and I think my grandfather, my great-grandfather, and my father would agree that he's the best of the Katters, and I just hope that that statement proves to be true. It was pretty easy for these things to go to your head, you know. But also, you know, these are blokes that achieved in their own world. I mean, the Meadow, even though he's young, he had his own business going. That's no mean achievement these days. Canute got the Silver Spike competition going for Australia. He won the premiership at Charters Towers, and he would have played State of Origin, Tony Hobbs said, when he was playing football, if it had been around when he was playing. But 3 years in a row, his Charters Towers team won the Silver Spikes competition. They beat the Perth team out of Western Australia 3 years in a row. And Robbie Katter, you know, went bush, bought himself a little one-man business in Mount Isa. He had 6 people working there, and it was very, very formidable business until the big boys, you know, came and they squashed, you know, all the financial consultants. So they've been crushed out of existence. The valuers have been crushed out of existence. So he's got a score to settle too. You know,
fair enough. Yeah.
He's got a score to settle.
Bob, just back to Scott Morrison with you know, obviously talking about that dam. That was one of the things when you know, when you walked in, I think you said that you weren't going to give him supply. I think, what was it, 24 hours later, you had a meeting and you asked for 2 things. One was the Humidity. Was it Humidity? What was the other one?
Hell's Gate.
Humidity.
And a little weird, that's little nothing really, in Charters Towers. But it'll
and what about
works for Charters Towers, I'm pretty confident.
And the market gardens up north, wasn't it?
Market Gardens from my blackfella cousin brothers.
So just explain that, because a lot of people sort of don't, you know, that probably didn't get big coverage. You know, let's just talk about that roughly, because, you know, one thing through all this Black Lives Matter stuff, there's been huge issues in Australia that hasn't, you know, no one talks about, and yet I think it's taken the focus away from the real issues that the Aborigines have in this country.
All those demonstrations, people are angry, and I suppose they're entitled to be angry, but I don't know what they achieve. They most certainly won't achieve market gardens in these areas. Market gardens were never mentioned. Well, I'd say probably 1,500 people are dying each year in these little communities in Queensland mainly, and in the Northern Territory, in the top of Western Australia, Central Australia. Maybe 2,000 people are dying each year that shouldn't be dying. The missionaries...
It's just because they're not getting good food. That's pretty well it.
Malnutrition.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is 20% of Australia's fruit and vegetables are growing in far north Queensland. But they are all taken back to Brisbane, and then they come back.
Trucked back up.
To far north Queensland. I don't know why, but that's what happens. By the time they get back to Cairns, there's only a boat or a road train going out once a week to the community areas. Used to be missions. So by the time the fruit and vegetable gets there, they're overripe. And they're really, most should be thrown out. And they're not very palatable. But they're extremely expensive. I mean, you've had to, carry the stuff all the way to Brisbane, all the way back, and then from Cairns out to the Pumpa, Browse, and Gowan Yarmouth. Now, I just choose my words carefully here. It's inevitable as sun rises that this is taken to the United Nations. This is going to happen. And when the world finds out that the way Australia treats their first Australians, and I'm not talking about blokes like myself that are dark and run around calling ourselves black fellas. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people that are real fair dinkum black fellas, Palm Island, Gowan Yarmouth, Dormitory, Normanton, even though it's probably a predominantly white town, but still include Normanton, Georgetown, Cooktown, to name a few others, Burketown. Now, that identifiable group of people have the highest incarceration rates of any identifiable group of people on Earth. They have the lowest life expectancy of any group of people on Earth. They have the highest stolen children rates of any group of people on Earth. And they are nearly twice as high as the period for which that bunch of hypocrites called members of Parliament got up and apologised. And went, stealing them twice the rate we were stealing them then, for exactly the same reason. Oh, you're not looking after these children properly. I'll have to take them off you. Well, maybe that's true. But the fact is that you have the highest stolen children of any group of people on Earth. Now, when the rest of the world finds out about this, do you seriously think that the rest of the world is going to accept that? I mean, what happened to South Africa was they were trade sanctioned. They couldn't sell them to the outside world. They were spat upon when their passports were shown and they realised they were South Africans. People spat on them. They couldn't play any sport, the rest of the world. If you think that the rest of the world is going to accept what is the shame of this nation, continuation, they're not. Just to save my country. Forget about worrying about the black folks. Just to save my country, Australia, everyone. The desperation. I sat up 4 nights this week till nearly midnight preparing an action plan. And I have approached 12 of the most distinguished Australians. These are famous people and distinguished Australians, respected by the entire nation, to go on a Distinguished Australians group. And I was really surprised when 8 of them more or less said yes. Now, they want to get the finer details. So I've been up every night, working on this. Been working on for 8 weeks, I'm ashamed to say. But there'll be an action council. I've asked Gerhard Pearson, Nolly's brother, to head up the Action Council. They'll draw up a plan. The plan will go to the Distinguished Australians, because if the Distinguished Australians group approves that plan, they'll probably modify it. But if they approve that plan, the rest of Australia cannot ignore that plan. And I think that the fear of this getting out to the United Nations, the World International Court of Justice, and the power of those Distinguished Australians groups, because politicians are the lowest ranked in respect. We are the lowest ranked profession. Now, sometimes the journalists manage to get a below us, but most of the time, we're the most spat upon people in society today. And here's a good example why. But you can't build a market garden. Those poor bloody missionaries didn't have two bobs to rub together, didn't have a change of clothes. They went out there and they put the market gardens in, because they knew the people, if they foraged for food, they'd get shot and raped and terrible things happen to them. So they protected them, but they knew they couldn't forage for food, so they had to provide nutrition for them. So, and there's a missionary and his wife there by themselves. They couldn't, put the market gardens in, but they got the people together. They got a little bit of money from their churches to finance the market gardens. There was a market garden in every community in North Queensland, 14 communities, every home in the Torres Straits. And if there is a shame of Australia, our participation in the Boer War, 28,000 women and children were starved to death. There's a shame. If there is another shame, Australia, we made it unlawful to have a fruit and vegetable garden in your backyard for the Torres Strait Islanders. And how in hell's name are they going to get fresh fruit and vegetables?
It's just madness.
Every family had their own backyard fruit and vegetable garden. Disease could get in, like the walking. There's the trading canoes been coming down from New Guinea for 50,000 years, and they're still coming down. Any disease was going to get here would long been it, but that was the justification. And then they stopped the dinghy commercial fishing that had saved Barrier Reef. So we blackfellas in Torres Strait had to die to save the Barrier Reef. Greeny bloody, doctors' daughters in bloody Brisbane. We had to please them, so we had to starve to death for that. And, they fought the battle. They're fighting people, the islanders. They fought the battle and they've got the right back. It's too late now. The backyard gardens have been gone for nearly 20 years. And the dinghy fishing, well, there's no freezers there. There's no one to sell it to on the island. So it's gone. We've got the right to do it now.
So what would you say to that? What would you say to the people? What would you say to the latte sipping people in the cities that want to protest for old mate over in US when we've actually got those big issues actually in our backyard?
I think it's best to answer your question this way. There's a little journalist with the Australian newspaper, and when I was talking about the failure of the government, I was promised market gardens, and there's not even been a discussion taking place. And Scott Morrison, I get a lot of time for Scott, but he's got to answer for this. I'm going to make sure that he does answer for this. Right? There's not, in 15 months after promising me market gardens, there's not even been a discussion have taken place between a nutritionist and the government, or a contract farmer and the government, or anyone and the government. Nothing. I mean, the promise is just being treated with absolute contempt.
Well, we could probably say that about stage 2 of the Horton pipeline and the LNP promise for funding, and now the squabble over GST distribution to the state. So, that promise was also made 18 months ago by our local federal member who won the election. And there's all this squabbling going on. And in the meantime, that stage of that pipeline is stalled. And, people in Townsville, contractors, etc., jobs, they're suffering as a consequence.
Well, we've got to be positive and say that it was wonderful that when the federal member here got the endorsement, he was on disability pension, and then he was suddenly cured of his disability and became a member of parliament. So it's really a very good thing that he got the nomination, because it obviously cured him of his disability that he had before getting the government pension for his disability. Having said that, I mean, that's the reason why people hate you. And people say to me, you promised. I have never promised anything in my life. I happen to come from a very powerful and for a long time very rich family in North Queensland. And I would have been killed by great granddaddy if I would have making promises.
Yeah.
You try and deliver, but you don't go around making promises. In this case, I was made promises, written promises. And, I mean, what would you, if you're a bloke living in Berlin or Paris or Los Angeles, what would you think of Australia if you heard those figures? What would you think of us as a nation? And are we doing anything about it? Are we doing anything about it? No, there's not one single thing being done by the government that contributes anything, except listen to a mob of do-gooders who are paternalists who believe that the people should be looked after by us.
Sounds like, Bob, you need to link up with Jacinta Price, who's a councillor in Alice Springs, because she conveys a lot of information along those lines that mainstream seem to not really acknowledge, mainstream media, and she gets a bit of a bashing for speaking her truth or what she sees, and from some great authority to say those things too, and it's quite interesting.
I don't really know a lot about what's going on in the bigger world, and but I do know what's going on in the first Australian world. I was minister for the best part of a decade. And I was Minister of Mines and Energy as well during that period of time. And as an Australian, I just want. But going back, I just Brendan, in answer to your question, I was just doing an interview, and I brought up the issue of the market gardens, and the journalist said, how are you going to vote on the, having a special member of parliament, first Australian member of parliament? And I said, well, I claim to be first Australian. I'm darker, comfortable, blonde curry. You prove I'm not, But there's 5, 6, 7 people claiming to be first Australian in the parliament now. What, next one's going to make a difference, is it? But I don't think so. Firstly. And secondly, recognition of the Constitution. Is that going to feed the people at Cowan? Is that going to overcome their dying of malnutrition? But they're real worried about with the recognition of the Constitution. I mean, the first people in this country, and they were here for, 30, 40,000 people, and there were probably waves of immigrants that came in then. A lot of people, the Australians look a lot different. So another wave of people came in. But, I was brought up with a very definite understanding that there were races or race people here before the Europeans arrived. And I'm not saying that there weren't, I'm not saying we shouldn't have different races of people coming to Australia in the future either. But how can you be sincere in caring about first Australians when there's maybe 2,000 dying that shouldn't be dying? I mean, you are not allowed to own a piece of land in these community areas. I mean, it's possible. It's possible to get title, but don't try it. And the bloke should have got the Nobel Prize some years ago. He wrote an absolutely incredibly good book, The Making of Capital. Hernando de Soto. He was one of the leading economists with the United Nations, with the World Bank. But he said the reason that Peru, Egypt, and the Philippines are the poorest countries on earth is because you can't get a title deed. why are these people the poorest people on earth? Because they can't get a title deed. And I could see that so vividly. And the first thing that people asked for when I was minister, I wasn't out there to tell them what they wanted. You know, I was paid to listen to what they wanted and try and deliver it. So they wanted title deeds. So they own a block of land, the same as you or I own a block of land where our house sits or our farm sits or our factory or our garage workshop sits. But they're not allowed to do that. There's no such thing as a title deed. Now there is, but it's a fair call, so there isn't.
You just mentioned the United Nations there, Bob. Is it something that you'd like to see Australia leave?
I haven't got enough knowledge to answer that question properly. I just haven't got time to watch the news or appreciate international affairs that much, Brendan. But let me answer your question this way. I'm backing Trump 1,000% in pulling out of the World Health Organization. They're trying to cover up the COVID emanation out of China. They've done everything humanly possible to try and cover it up. And there is something very sick in that World Health Organization, which is an associate body of the United Nations. So whilst I couldn't answer your question in general about the United Nations, but I most certainly endorse strongly Trump and let them know that we're not here to play tiddlywinks with them and please the outraged youth brigade. And I suppose when I was young, I might have fallen into that category of outraged youth. But they were running around in my day at the university waving little red books, Mao Zedong little red books. You know, this is how badly wrong they got it. This is how badly wrong they got it. It is quite clear now that Mao Zedong was responsible for the death of 48 million people. He's the world champion. He beats Tamerlane. He beats Hitler. He beats Stalin. He beats Genghis Khan. He's the world champion, 48 million. And yet they're all running around, waving around this little red book. And a friend of mine, I remember a young bloke I knew, his mother, she said she had a picture of Mao Zedong on a wall all of her life since the university days. He was her great hero. And she started reading these books on Mao Zedong, the ones that are coming out now. They weren't going to be published before, the ones coming out now. And she took the framed picture down, burned it, and had a complete mental breakdown. But, you know, young people, they're young. You know, they don't know what's going on, really. And they want to assert themselves. And the perpetually outraged brigade, they'll always be with us. But you don't take notice of little kids running around, shooting their mouths off, trying to attract attention. You know, the elders of the tribe, who I've listened to all my life, was brought up to listen to. The Bradfield scheme, when I got elected to Parliament, I went to Freddie Tripp, elder of the tribe that I come from, the Midwest, North Queensland's Midwest. And I went to Freddie, he told me how to get the Bradfield scheme. And I went to the mayor of the Dalrymple Shire, Harry Clark, and I said, no, I'm here to take my instructions. He told me to go and get the Bradfield scheme. Well, I'd never heard of it before at that stage. But, you know, you listen to people that have wisdom and respect. You don't listen to some raving little kid that's trying to assert himself. And a lot of those raving little kids will become the elders later on, but they're not elders now. So it's a good question that you ask, Brendan. And but you know, they keep saying to people like me, and not as many people like me, that you know we've signed up and we must honour our obligation under our free trade agreements. We'll be taken to the World Court if we don't honour our obligations. Well, the world agreed to a 36% cut in support levels, that's tariffs and subsidies, to agriculture. There is not a single country on earth that has honoured those agreements. with 2 exceptions. I'll give you a hint. One was New Zealand. Tell me who the other one was.
What are we? We're 5.
Yeah.
What's it? 5%, isn't it? Subsidy.
Ours is 5, right? The rest of the world average is 39%. And there's hardly any countries under 33%. I couldn't name you a single country that's under 33%.
And I think the highest is 62%.
36% is about a fair figure, you know. I know some of them are 40%, you know. Japan's over 50, I think.
All right, well,
isn't one of them 62%?
Well, you know, you could be right. I mean, I you know, I'm a bit rusty on the figures. It's been a while since I've done them, Brendan. But, you know, they say we should be honouring our commitments. Why don't you go and preach that to the other 156 countries on earth? Don't preach it to us, because we've got none. And that's the reason we can't have arbitration in the sugar industry. We should just take whatever price the foreign sugar mill owner wishes to pay us. And surprise, surprise, he doesn't wish to pay us much at all. You know, he'll keep us down as peasants, working for nothing. We subsidise because our wife works at the local school. I'd say that incorporate about 10% of the entire sugar industry. But the only reason that they're staying as sugar farmers is because someone's subsidising it. Someone's working in the mines, someone's working in the local school, someone's working somewhere, which is holding on to the farm. What for? What for? So we can be poverty-stricken peasants for the rest of our lives. Well, I'm not taking it. I'm standing on my hind feet. And those that want to stand up and be Australians, step over here. Those that don't, go out and vote for your Liberal Party and your Liberal National Party and your bloody Labor Party. Keep voting for them. Keep voting for them. But you're not Australians. As far as I'm concerned, you're a traitor. You put one beside the LNP. As far as I'm concerned, you're a traitor to your country. And I can give you volumes of proof for what I'm saying. And if I speak with great passion, I'm thinking about my forebears that died at Gallipoli, died at bloody Shanghai prison, forebears of my battalion that died up on Kokoda. That's what I'm thinking about. And I'm thinking about those blokes that went out in the middle of nowhere, those Chinamen, those Afghans, those Welsh, Irish, Cornish, Germans that went out there in the middle of nowhere and created what until 30 years ago was the richest country and the freest country on earth. And I've watched for the last 30 years, those freedoms been taken off us day after day, week after week. Those freedoms been taken away from us. So we need a freedom and fun party. Join us. We're the Australian party. We're the freedom and fun party.
Well, there you have it. All right, Bob, look, we're hitting the 2-hour mark for our interview. So I loved
it. Thank you.
Yeah, fabulous.
Privilege to be on your program. Thanks, Brendan.
Bob, much appreciated, mate. Thanks for
thanks,
God
Bob.
bless all the listeners.
Thank
viewers.
you. Oh, excuse me, Brendan.
So good insight. It's always quite interesting. You know, someone like Bob, who's been around in politics for quite a long time. He, you know, speaks with a fair bit of knowledge. You know, what he's seen, and what goes on. And it's always quite interesting. I brought the Black Lives Matter thing up because a lot of people got on their horses, and yet, you know, in our own country, we've got those issues, and no one, you know, throughout the whole protesting, you know, which has now led to an explosion in Victoria with
that's
the
exactly
COVID
right.
stuff.
Yeah, it does make you wonder.
No one brought up the market. You know, Bob had the numbers. You know, 1,500, 2,000 Aborigines dying a year from malnutrition, from all that. You know, that's a bigger issue than some people over in America getting killed from police. I believe anyway. I would prefer to see people in Australia looked after, you know, and people protesting for that rather than people
absolutely
protesting about getting hit by police. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, no, No, that I tend to agree with you. We've got, lots of issues in our own country that we should be heavily focusing on
Mm,
before we worry about what happens in America.
mm,
But
for sure.
Bob's got such experience and knowledge, and I've always said he's like a walking history book. And you can't replace experience and knowledge like that. And I really enjoyed listening to his point about, we do need to listen to our elders if we've lost anything in our society. And that it's that element that seems to have faded quite a bit.
Mm,
It doesn't mean to say that those that have been on this planet a bit longer know more, but certainly they know more about human life and human interaction and why things have gone the way they are and are the way they are from a perspective. And that's invaluable knowledge. You
mm,
can't pick up a book or get online and read an article and gain that kind of knowledge. I mean, we can learn about it, but talking to someone who's got that lived experience and
mm,
that lived knowledge about people and personalities, and particularly in the political arena, policies and direction and the implications of some of these significant decisions. As he's said, the last 30 years, he's watched Australian freedoms be taken away at an alarming rate, week in, week out, and, if we're hearing that from people like Bob and from I hear it from others that are in his age bracket as well. And it's not about trying to hold on to what it was like in the past. What it's about is to hold on to the freedoms and the ability to blossom and grow. And I think, if anything, that's what today's interview has really brought out. That we've got all this potential happening. However, we seem to have got the way in which we want to develop our nation. It's all skew-if, it's all wrong. It's
mm.
actually bringing about more harm than good. So
Well, I'll leave the thought with this. It's often, Bob started the show there talking about firearms, and some people made comments. Oh, we live in a very peaceful place, and we don't need firearms. Just use a baseball bat. Now, I find that a strange comment. Now, no one's, it is quite peaceful. However, it starts off like how many, and like Bob alluded to right at the end there, we've lost so many freedoms. You know,
mm,
they take your guns, then they take this, then they take that, then they take this. You may not like guns. You may not like guns, right? And that's fine. And no one's forcing you to like anything, but what's next? Like, what do they
mm,
take off you next?
mm,
You know, fire firearm owners just recently, they're talking about the gel blasters. That's a big thing in
mm,
state parliament currently, and a lot
yeah.
of firearm people have come out and said, "Oh, who cares? It's only a toy." The fact that someone's actually legislating that they're going to stop toys. It's
Mm,
toys today. Then it's the next thing. Then it's oh, you can't have a V8. What if you get to the point where you no longer can have a car? You have to have
mm,
an electric car.
mm,
These are the things. It's each freedom. It's each
mm.
freedom they easily take away from
Or
you, and
options,
and
choice, and
and
responsible
choice. So
use.
yep,
It's actually saying that we can't be responsible for ourselves.
100%, 100%. It's the right to speak on Facebook. People
Mm,
getting what do you call it? Taking away the freedom of speech. All those things,
mm,
all those little things that get constantly eroded from us. Uh, there you may not like what you may agree with. Oh yeah, I don't want someone to have that, so I don't really care.
mm.
But eventually they'll come. Eventually someone will want to take something off
Thing
you
from you that you do care about.
that you
Yeah.
do care about, and then all of a sudden, who'll be there fighting with you? So just
Mm,
keep that in mind next time you see something get taken off someone. Think, even if you don't support that, support their freedom to actually have that
mm,
right, because
mm.
one day someone will come and take something off you, and there'll be no one there to actually help you stand up for
Yeah.
you. So that's there's a
Mm,
strong
that's
message
right.
from talking about freedoms and stuff at the end, because you know I if you like your freedoms today, make sure that you stand up for them, because in years to come that you may not have any.
Absolutely, Brendan. Well, thank you very much, Brendan. This is week 11 of our show, High Humidity, and thank you to all our viewers. We hope you've gained a great deal. We've got two wonderful opportunities coming up. Next week, we're going to talk to a group of people who want to talk more about what it means for North Queensland to become the 7th state of Australia. So that will be exciting, and even more exciting, the week following. Can I announce it here, Brendan?
Yeah, announce it. We're still...
We have Pauline Hanson coming on our show in 2 weeks' time, so it's very exciting.
1st of August. We're still yet to confirm a time, but at this stage, the date's been all good. So yeah, we'll once we confirm a time.
And I might also add that we have been trying to get members from the 2 majors, particularly more recently, been trying to get members from the Townsville and Thuringowa seat, the current sitting ALP members, but we've had no luck just of yet. And I'm hoping that with a couple more phone calls directly, we might get them on the show, but at the moment they haven't been quite receptive. So if anybody knows them out there and say, look, get on Nettie and Bunny's show.
Tell them to come over yarn. It's, if they're afraid of the tough questions, it's more to try and get, their side of the story. It's not, there's no tough questions. It's more to try and break it down. There'll be some questions, and if they're uncomfortable to answer, well, so be it. But, we want people to actually, get a broad range of views on this platform. So, the way we're trying to sell it to people, it's just like we're sitting around having a drink at a pub just with no beer at the minute.
Yeah.
So, tell them to come on.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting. We welcome anyone. So please, if you
welcome all views, and that's what this show is about. And like today, we've had Bob, and with a range of views, we've had others too. So this is week 11 from Nettie and Bunny on High Humidity. So thank you very much again, people. And Bunny, you have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you
enjoy
soon.
the rest of the weekend. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, and thanks for stopping in, everyone. It's much appreciated, and have a beautiful weekend, and hopefully no one freezes to death up.
No, freezing in the north. Okay. Thanks a lot. See you all later. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye for now. See ya.